Well, good morning, everybody. So glad that you are with us for part 4 of a series that we started just a few weeks ago. I wanted to start the message today with a quick show of hands. How many of you have ever missed out on something incredible, or we might say something greater, because you got impatient and you settled for something? Let me see your hands. Hold them up really high, really high. Okay, almost all of you. My wife did that when she married me, like she just said, I caught her at a moment in her life when she had really low self-esteem, and I swooped in on that and I said, if you like it, put a ring on it. And so we did as fast as possible before she got wise to what was really happening, and she's having to live with that regret ever since, right? No, I hope not. I hope she doesn't feel that way. I don't think she does. But here's what I do know. I do know that all of us, at some point in our lives, we've probably chosen to settle. And we look back on it and we go, man, I could have had something so much greater. Thought a lot this week about why that happens and why we do it. And I think that we probably all do it for a lot of different reasons. I do think that there are a lot of people in the world who struggle with insecurities. And so they don't really think that they deserve something greater. And so what ends up happening is they end up settling for something less than God's best for their life. I think there are other people who aren't insecure. I think they're just impatient, right? We would rather have something to gratify us now rather than waiting for something greater later, right? This is the tension that a lot of us feel in our lives, man. We are people who want instant gratification. We want what we want, and we want it right now. And because we're impatient, sometimes we miss out on the greater things that God might have for us. I think there are other people in life who miss out on greater opportunities because they're lazy. A lot of lazy people in the world who just kind of take the path of least resistance. John Maxwell talks about this in a lot of his leadership resources. He says that everything worthwhile in life is uphill. The problem is that we all have downhill habits, right? And those two things just don't go together very well. And so because we have downhill habits, because we coast, because we take the path of least resistance, we're never going to experience the things that are greater, that are at the top of the mountain that we have to climb, right? Some people, I think they miss out on greater because they have a lack of faith. Maybe they feel like they've disappointed God and that God's angry at them. So God's certainly not going to give me great things. In fact, God's probably going to punish me because he's probably seeing all the things that I'm doing in my life. A lot of people in their life, for different reasons, we end up settling rather than holding out for something greater. In fact, years ago, there was a man named C.S. Lewis who actually wrote about man's tendency to just settle in life. I want you to listen to what he said. I'll throw it up on the side screen. He said, "It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us. Like an ignorant child who just goes on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased." So I just want to ask you this morning, are you settling? Are you maybe like C.S. Lewis is describing, settling for a life that's just about drink and about sex and about ambition, and you think that's what life is about, and so you're just settling for that life when Jesus may be saying, man, I have a far greater life for you to enjoy? Is life for you about throwing a few down and trying to hook up? I know a lot of people who go through life, and for them, their nights and their weekends, they're full of decisions that they barely remember, but that they would love to forget. I know a lot of other people who are very, very ambitious, and so they're trying to create some kind of great life by chasing after the next big thing, but chasing after the next big thing or building the next big thing just becomes one more thing that they have to maintain, and it feels like a noose is hanging around their neck. Like, this describes life for so many of us. And so today what I want to do is I want to take you to this passage where you're going to see that there really is a greater life. It leads to greater joy, and it leads to a far greater purpose that God has for your life while you're here on this earth. Now, to get me where I need to go, I want to start by telling you about my favorite commercial that is out on TV right now. There's a new commercial that's out that kind of highlights the features of the new iPhone 13. In fact, specifically in this commercial, what they're highlighting is they're highlighting the cinematic mode on the camera features or the camera systems in this new iPhone. Pretty incredible features. If you've never seen the commercial, I'm not even going to try to explain it to you. I'm just going to show it to you. I want you to check it out.
Can I ask you a question? Am I out of focus?
You're fine.
Yeah, but I mean, look at me. I'm all blurry.
Well, you're supporting cast.
What?
The camera focuses on the most important character, which is me.
Well, what if my character had a big reveal?
Like what?
Like maybe I'm the killer.
Are you?
Yeah. No. Could have been. Could have been the killer.
I love that commercial. I think it is so creative and so witty, but I also think it makes a really great point. And the point that I want to make today is this: the focus is always supposed to be on the main character, not the supporting cast. Now, that's not just one of the keys to making a great film. That is one of the keys to living a great life. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who struggle in life because they always want the focus to be on them. This describes life for so many people in our world today. We're kind of like the guy up in the video, right? We don't want to live life in the background. We don't want to be blurry. We want a little bit of attention. We want a little bit of focus to be on us. And so we end up saying things that we probably shouldn't say. Sometimes we end up doing things that we probably shouldn't be doing, all because we want the focus to be on us. Because when the focus is on us, it makes us feel important. When the focus is on us, it makes us feel a little bit more significant in life. For some of us, when the focus is on us, it actually makes us feel loved in a way that maybe we've never felt loved. I think this starts out for people at a very young age in life, which makes it so hard for us to break out of these trends the older we get. When we're really, really young, what happens is we typically get involved in all kinds of sports and extracurricular activities. And then we've got mom and dad who are running around like crazy, just trying to keep up with everything that we've got going on as a child, right? Mom and dad, they start skipping meals. Mom and dad, they start skipping out on work because they're just trying to be at every single event. And when that happens, little Johnny or little Jane, they grow up believing that the world revolves around them, right? You have good intentions as parents, but you don't realize that you're actually teaching your children a very dangerous principle in life. We're teaching them without intending to, that life really can become all about them. In fact, I have some friends in our church who have actually spent their years as parents trying to fight this tendency, and they do it by always asking one question. The question that they ask is this: are the kids a member of our circle, right? Here we are, a family of 4, we're all in the circle together, or have one of the kids become the center of the circle, right? Because that can happen. I mean, life can just get so crazy, and one of the kids gets involved in a certain activity, and all of a sudden they've got practice 5 nights a week, and all of a sudden they really are in the center of the circle. That's a great question that you can use to try to guard yourself against falling into this parenting trap, because you don't want that for your kids. See, when kids start out believing that the world revolves around them, they end up becoming adults who expect the world to revolve around them. And so they say all kinds of things, that they do all kinds of things in an attempt to attract a very unhealthy amount of attention, right? We see this maybe in the most obvious way in the fact that we are obsessed with the selfie, right? We love ourselves, and so we're always taking pictures of ourselves. Years ago, Business Insider actually published an article called Planet Selfie, in which they talked about how we use the selfie to get the attention off of other people, and we use it to get the attention onto ourselves. In the article, they claim that today we are now posting somewhere in the realm of 1.8 billion pictures every single day to our social media accounts, hundreds and hundreds of millions of which are selfies. I don't know if you've been to the Hattiesburg Mall, but you can go into the Hattiesburg Mall this afternoon, and if you were to go in there, they actually have a room called the selfie room, okay? You can pay $20 to go into the selfie room and take pictures of yourself in all kinds of what I would call very awkward situations and setups, okay? Like, it is the most ridiculous thing that I think I have ever seen in a mall. And yet, this is indicative of who we are as a society and who we are as people. We are obsessed with ourselves. We take pictures of ourselves. We post those pictures of ourselves. We're always talking about ourselves, thinking about ourselves. In essence, we really are people who are living for ourselves. In fact, if one of your friends takes a picture of a group and they tag you in it on social media, what's the very first thing that you do? Be honest. You look for yourself, right? Just be real, right? You're looking at yourself and you're going, man, were my eyes open? Do I look fat? Do I look thin? Do I look like the way I'm smiling? Like we zero in on ourselves at the exclusion of everyone else in the photo. This is what we do. And this way of life can lead not just to selfish or self-seeking behaviors, but God knows that it can lead to self-destructive behaviors. And that right there is why I want to remind you today that the focus is always supposed to be on the main character, not the supporting cast. And if you can get that right in your life, then you will live a life that contains far greater joy. You will live a life that has far greater purposes, and you will enjoy far greater relationships. And so the question today is, who is the main character? And because we're in church, the answer is always the same. It's Jesus. That's right. The main character is Jesus. This message that we're in today is part of a greater study in the book of John. There's no question that Jesus is the main character in the book of John. The New Testament is part of a greater piece of work, or the book of John is part of a greater piece of work called the New Testament. There's no question Jesus is the main character in the New Testament. The New Testament is part of a greater work called the Bible. There's no question about it. Jesus is the main character in the entire Bible. He's the main character in the Christian faith. I will tell you, he is the main character in all of human history, and it will serve us well as individuals and as people if we can get the attention off of us and get the attention on to Jesus. In fact, that is the point of the story that I'm going to read to you today in John chapter 3, starting in verse 22. I'm going to read down to verse 30. Check it out. The text says this: after this, Jesus and his disciples went out into the Judean countryside, where he spent some time with them and baptized. Now, John was also baptizing at Aenon near Salem because there was plenty of water and people were coming and being baptized. This was before John was put in prison. An argument developed between some of John's disciples and a certain Jew over the matter of ceremonial washing. They came to John and said to him, "Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, the one you testified about, look, he's baptizing, and everyone's going to him." To this, John replied, "A person can receive only what is given them from heaven. You yourselves can testify that I said, I'm not the Messiah, but am sent ahead of him. The bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. He must become greater, and I must become less. I want to make one thing really, really clear to you today. You do not want to settle for living a life that is all about yourself when you could have spent your life living it for Jesus. John understands that. He gets it. But his disciples, they don't. In fact, the story opens up and John is out there doing exactly what God put him on the earth to do. He is preparing the way for Jesus. He's baptizing people with his disciples. And all of a sudden, this new guy in town shows up, and his name is Jesus, and he's got a team, and they're over there baptizing people as well. Now, if you're the kind of person who always wants to be the center of the world, if you're the kind of person who always wants people talking about you or coming to you or needing you, if you're the kind of person who just likes to be the center of attention, then this moment right here would have created a whole lot of drama in your life if you were on John's team. A lot of us, we don't like competition. A lot of us, we want to be the only show in town because we want people coming to us. We want people to need us. We want people talking about us in a positive way. We don't want someone else to steal the spotlight. In fact, when someone else shows up on the scene and they start to draw attention to themselves and away from us, it usually leads to some kind of conflict or some kind of drama, just like it does right here in verse 25. Look again at the text. It said an argument developed. We've got conflict because they're at odds with each other. So this argument develops between some of John's disciples and a certain Jew over the matter of ceremonial washing. Now, the question is, well, what's the ceremonial washing issue about, and why does it even matter right here, right now? A couple of things could be happening. The first one, probably not, but we'll throw it out there for consideration. They may be in a situation where John and his team are over here baptizing people one way, and then Jesus shows up with his team and they're baptizing people another way. And this Jewish expert shows up on the scene and starts stirring up the drama and starts comparing the way that the two are baptizing. And you guys are doing it this way and you guys are doing it this way. And this is how you should be doing it. And they're stirring up drama and they're creating a whole lot of conflict. Or maybe, this is the one that I think it is, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. They may be doing what so many of us traditionally do. They're fighting, but they're not fighting about the real issue because they're actually embarrassed about the real issue. And so we're going to talk about another issue that's not the real issue. We're going to talk about ceremonial washing, okay? And let me tell you, this is what people do all of the time when someone starts to steal the spotlight or take it away from them. When we see someone else who's creeping into our scene, when we see someone else who's drawing attention to them and away from us, we start to pick them apart. We don't like the results that they're getting. We don't like the attention that they're getting. And so we get very, very critical of them. We say things we shouldn't say. In some cases, we do things that we shouldn't do. We criticize what they did say. We criticize what they didn't say. We criticize what they did do. We criticize what they didn't do. We criticize the way they look or the way they dress. We criticize their approach. We attack their character. We get really, really nasty with people really, really fast because we don't want the spotlight to be on them. We want it to be on us. We're so desperate for attention that we say things we shouldn't say, and we do things that we really shouldn't do. And so as your pastor who cares about you and loves you, I have to ask, does this describe any of your relationships? Does it describe a relationship that you have at work? Does it describe a relationship that you used to have at work, but you don't even have that relationship anymore because this kind of stuff creeped into the relationship and it drove you apart? Does it describe a relationship, students, that you have with someone at school, someone on your sports team? Maybe it describes a relationship with a friend. This kind of conflict that is really common in our world, it's almost always rooted in jealousy because we want it to be about us, not them. This is the problem that John's disciples had with Jesus, the new guy in town. In fact, I would tell you, this is the problem that almost every rabbi in that day and time had with Jesus, who was the new guy in town. They're looking at Jesus, and the truth is, Jesus' crowds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and their crowds are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and they are ticked off about it. In fact, they're so upset that they're going to go and they're going to engage in a little bit more conflict. In fact, if you look at this down in verse 26, we're told that John's disciples, they came to John and they said to him, "Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, the one that you testified about, look, he's baptizing and everyone is going to him." Now we're getting to the real issue. The real issue was not ceremonial washing. That's what they criticized when they were engaged in a public discussion about the issue. But now that they're in private, they're talking about the real issue. The real issue is that we were baptizing everybody, and now we're baptizing nobody. The real issue is that everyone used to be coming to us, and now no one is coming to us. The crowd that Jesus was drawing was huge. And now their crowds are getting really, really small. In fact, if you go back into the Gospel of Mark, Mark does something interesting. He does this kind of compare and contrast moment where he shows you the popularity of John against the popularity of Jesus. In Mark chapter 1, verse 5, he says this about John's popularity with the people. He said, the whole Judean countryside, I want you to think about that. So there's this area called Judea, the whole Judean countryside, and all the people of Jerusalem went out to him, confessing their sins. They were baptized by him in the Jordan. That's John. He's drawing a big crowd from this whole countryside and from the city of Jerusalem. Then 2 chapters later, Mark says, now let me show you the popularity of Jesus. And this is what he says. He said, when they heard about all that he was doing, that's Jesus, many people came to him from Judea and Jerusalem. That's where John was drawing a crowd. But now people are coming to Jesus from Idumea and the region across the Jordan and around Tyre and around this place called Sidon. And so what you see in this compare-contrast moment is that John was really, really popular, but Jesus was going viral, okay? Like this is what's happening in their day. And because of that, John's disciples are sitting there and their pride is hurt. They're a little jealous. They're a little bit bitter because life was a little more fun when it was all about them. And so I want to ask you, have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt jealous of somebody else? Maybe you used to be the rock star on the team, and now there's a new rock star on the team, and everybody's talking about them and nobody's talking about you. Maybe you feel like people are starting to pass you by, and you don't like it. And so you're getting bitter. You're becoming a gossip. You're getting really, really critical in your spirit. There's a greater way for you to live life. Maybe you feel like other people are getting opportunities that you don't have. Maybe you're ticked off because they made the team and you didn't make the team. And you feel like they should have never made the team, or your kid should have been on the team, and this town's so political, and the only reason their kid made the team and my kid didn't make the team is because of who the coach is, or their daddy knows somebody else's daddy, and that's just the way this town works. And you're getting really, really angry, really, really bitter, really, really jealous, really, really critical, and it's ruining your life. God really does want something greater for you. This whole experience didn't really just hurt their feelings as much as it hurt their pride. And there's a little bit of pride that's living in every single one of us. And it's why we have to remember it's not about us. It really is about Jesus. John's disciples are struggling to get that, but not John. John models for us a kind of humility that we all need in our lives. John knew the world does not revolve around me, but it should revolve around Jesus. You see, when Jesus is growing in popularity, it didn't make John jealous. You know what it did? It produced in him a greater amount of joy. In fact, it seems as though in this whole exchange between John and his disciples, that the disciples have forgotten everything that John had been telling them. From day one, John has been saying, it's not about me. It's about the one who is coming after me, the one whose sandals I'm not even worthy to stoop down and untie. That's the message that John had been telling his disciples. That was what John had been telling all of the religious leaders when they were trying to figure out why so many people were coming to him and who he was. And now in this passage and in this day, John's going to come right back to it again, and he's going to go, I've been trying to tell you, it's not about me, it's about the one who's coming after me, and I'm going to tell you again. In verses 28 and 29, he makes this statement. And then after the statement, he pivots into an analogy to help people really understand who it's all about. Listen to what he said. He said, you yourselves can testify that I said, I'm not the Messiah. It's not about me, but I'm sent ahead of him. It's about the one who's coming after me. And then he goes into his analogy. He said, the bride belongs to the bridegroom, or in our culture, we would just say the groom. The friend who attends the bridegroom or the groom waits and listens for him and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom or the groom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. Now, John is using this analogy of a wedding. Now, if you've ever been to a wedding or you've had a wedding, then you know this to be true. The wedding is all about the bride and the groom, right? That they are the main characters, right? That they're not the supporting cast, but there is a supporting cast around them, right? That there's a best man, there's a bridesmaid, and these people are there, but they're not there to take the attention off the couple that is getting married. And so that's the way it's supposed to be, right? But we've all either been to a wedding, or maybe we've heard horror stories about a wedding where that didn't play out, right? Maybe the best man or the bridesmaid had a little too much to drink, and they started saying some things and maybe even doing some things that took the attention off of the couple, put the attention onto themselves. How did that work out? Not too good, right? Stupid people get stupid prizes. I mean, it just doesn't end well, right? Typically speaking, it leads to a miserable wedding, creates a lot of unnecessary drama. It usually ends in a lot of broken relationships. And John knows that that's not just true of a wedding, that's true of your life and my life. When you try to make yourself the center of your world or even the center of the universe, when you take the spotlight and you're always trying to put it on yourself, it almost always leads to unnecessary drama, lots of conflict, lots of broken relationships, and a tremendous amount of jealousy. And this is why John would say the greater thing that you can do in your life is to stop putting the spotlight on you and start putting the spotlight on the one who truly is greater. Start putting the spotlight on the one who really is the center of the universe. Put it on Jesus. In fact, I love how he says it down here in verse 30. He says of Jesus, he says, he must become greater and I must become less. Most translations put it like this: he must increase and I must decrease. Now, let me just point out to you what it meant for John to decrease. John was such a big deal. He had so many followers. He had so much respect of people in the community that John had to go away. John had to get out of the way so that people could get their eyes off of John and get their eyes onto Jesus. And so God allowed an evil king with evil intentions to carry out a really evil plan. And John was arrested, out of sight, out of mind. John was taken out of the spotlight so that Jesus didn't have to share the spotlight with anyone. Now, John was okay with that. In fact, I will tell you that John found joy in that because John knew that he had fulfilled his purpose in life. He knew what his purpose was. He knew that he had accomplished his mission. He created a pathway so that people could find Jesus and start to follow Jesus. And so when John is standing there trying to baptize people and nobody's coming to him and everybody's going to Jesus, he's looking at this thing going, man, people are leaving me by the thousands. At no fault of his own. And he didn't find any kind of jealousy in that. He found joy in that because he knew people are going to the one that they need to be going to. Jesus can do things for people that I could never do for people. And I will tell you that that's not just where John found his joy. That right there is where God wants you to find your joy. He wants you to get to that place in your life where you've obtained a level of maturity that you're no longer going through life going, man, I'm just always thinking about myself. I'm always talking about myself. I'm always posting pictures of myself. I'm just always living for myself. He wants you instead to get the focus back onto Jesus and help people find Jesus in their life because Jesus can do things that you could never do for them. And that's not just good for others. Let me tell you, that is good for you. Because when you get to that place in your life, if you can ever get this right, I promise you this, you will experience a lot less drama. You will experience a lot less conflict. You will experience greater degrees of joy and a real purpose in your life, a kind of joy that can be found only when you realize that your life is actually making a real difference. Listen, this is what Jesus taught us to do. While Jesus was on the earth, Jesus didn't just model this way of life, he taught us this way of life. This is not just something that you see in John. In fact, Jesus said this in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. He said it like this. He said, in the same way, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. What is Jesus saying? Jesus is saying that when you live your life doing good things for other people, it gets the spotlight off of you and it puts the spotlight where it's supposed to be on your Father in heaven. Now, can you imagine what would happen if we all got this right? Can you imagine how the world might change, or at least our part of the world might change? If there were 1,600 people who would walk out of this building this weekend going, the main character of my story is no longer going to be me. The main character of my story is going to be Jesus. I'm going to stop saying things I shouldn't say. I'm going to stop doing things that I probably shouldn't do in an attempt to draw attention to myself, and I'm going to keep the spotlight on Jesus. Can you imagine what would happen to your relationships? Can you imagine what would happen to your influence? Can you imagine what would happen internally in terms of the emotions that you feel? That strife and that jealousy would all of a sudden be placed with joy and with peace. I'm telling you, it wouldn't just change your life. It would change a lot of people's lives. And so I want to end with this question. What does it look like for Jesus to increase and for you to decrease? What's that look like? In the time that you have, what's it look like for you to decrease and for Jesus to increase? In the money that you invest, in the conversations that you have, in the posts that you make. If Jesus could be greater and you could be less, I promise you this, you would find a lot greater joy and a much greater purpose in your life. Life for you really would be greater. Will you pray with me? God, we just gather together as a group of people today, and we do confess that sometimes we try to take the attention off of others and we try to put it on ourselves. And God, even worse than that, sometimes we take the attention off of you and we put it on ourselves. So God, we just confess that to you. We confess that we can be selfish people, that we can be prideful people. We can put ourselves in the spotlight, in the center of attention. And so right here, right now, we're praying the prayer that John prayed. God, we're praying that you would become greater and that we would become less. God, we know that we could never do this in our own or on our own power, and so we ask that you help us, that you would change us from the inside out, and that we would live a life a lot more like John and a lot more like Jesus. And we pray it all in his name. Amen.